I never thought that the most painful day of my life would also be the day I would witness a miracle. My brother died in a terrible accident. His body was covered in blood, dust, and injuries. I cried like never before, believing that only an image of destruction would remain. The accident happened on a Wednesday morning. He was going to the construction site where he had worked for 15 years. A truck out of control hit him when he was crossing the street near the mosque after the Fajr prayer. The news came to me like lightning on a clear day, without warning, devastating. When I first saw his body in the hospital, my heart nearly stopped. He didn't look like my brother, the one who always had a smile on his face, the one who would rise before dawn to be first at the mosque. What I saw was a broken, unrecognizable body. But when the Ghusl began, the Islamic ritual washing, before everyone, something inexplicable happened. His body began to transform before my eyes. It was as if Allah had opened a window between this world and the next, allowing all of us to see something that normally remains hidden. My name is Ahmad bin Yusuf. I am 45 years old and come from a small town on the outskirts of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I am a teacher at a local school. Nothing special, just someone trying to live an honest life following the teachings of Islam. I am not a scholar, not an imam, just the younger brother of someone who has passed. But what I witnessed at the funeral changed my faith forever. This is not a story I heard from others or read in books. It's something I saw with my own eyes and that I now share so that others may reflect on the journey we will all make one day. Before continuing with this story, I want you to know that it doesn't matter where you are watching or reading this from, whether in Malaysia, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, or anywhere else. Death is universal, and Allah's signs are everywhere for those who have eyes to see. When they removed the body from the accident scene, I could barely recognize him. Dust, blood, and shards of glass were still on his skin. It was hard to believe that this was the same brother who taught me my first prayer when I was a child. My brother, Abdul Rahman, was 52 years old. He was a simple man, a worker who labored with his hands. His skin was darkened by the sun, his hands calloused from hard work. His entire life was dedicated to two things, his work and his religion. At the hospital, the nurses had done basic cleaning, but still, his face was almost unrecognizable. There were deep cuts on his forehead, bruises everywhere, and his expression seemed frozen in a moment of pain and surprise. The doctor, a non-Muslim who cared for him in his final moments, seemed intrigued by something. He spoke words in Arabic before he died, he told me. He repeated them several times, with a strange calmness considering his condition. Later I understood that he was reciting the Shahada, the testimony of faith, in his final moments. Following Islamic tradition, we needed to hold the funeral quickly. We took the body to the local mosque, where men from the community, including the imam, would perform the ghusl, the ritual purification of the body before burial. I was too devastated to help, so I sat in a corner of the room observing as they prepared everything for the ritual. Tears blurred my vision as I tried to accept that this broken and battered body was really my older brother, the one who always protected me, who shared with me the last piece of bread in difficult times. The men from the community prepared 3 types of water for the ritual, as taught by Prophet Muhammad. The imam, a white-bearded man who had known our family for decades, led the process with reverence. They applied water mixed with sidir, lotus leaf powder, as taught by the Prophet. The experienced hands moved with gentleness and respect, as if each touch was a supplication to Allah. When the water touched his face, something changed. The heavy expression began to soften, as if peace was gradually being restored. It was subtle at first. I thought it was just my imagination, my desperate wish to see my brother at peace, but it wasn't just me. One of the older men assisting in the ritual stopped for a moment, looking with amazement. "Look," he whispered, pointing to my brother's face. The facial tension that had marked his countenance after the accident, that expression of pain and shock, was gradually dissolving. The muscles relaxed, as if he was finally finding rest. The skin coloration, which had been grayish, began to take on a more natural tone. "Allah is showing His mercy," the imam said quietly, continuing the ritual without interrupting the prayers. I moved closer, incredulous. As they washed the right side and then the left side of the body, according to the Sunnah, the Prophet's practice, I noticed something even more extraordinary. The wounds, still visible, seemed less severe. Not that they were healing, that would be impossible, but it was as if they had lost part of their violence. And this was just the beginning of what Allah wanted to show. What would come next would make everyone in the room realize that we were witnessing something truly extraordinary. The second part of the ritual began with the preparation of water mixed with camphor. The Imam explained to some young people present that camphor helps to purify and preserve the body, in addition to having a spiritual significance, as it is mentioned in the Quran as one of the fountains of paradise. As they carefully poured the water over the body, something happened that made my heart almost stop. A gentle perfume began to fill the environment. It didn't come from bottles, it didn't come from the room. It was as if Allah was sending a sign of mercy over my brother. The aroma was not that of camphor, which has a characteristic strong smell. It was something completely different, delicate, pleasant, almost floral, but different from any flower I had ever smelled. A perfume that seemed not to belong to this world. One of the young men helping looked around, confused, searching for the source. "Where is this smell coming from?" he asked quietly. The Imam smiled softly. "From your brother's body, Ahmad. It is a sign. Not all Muslims receive this privilege after death." The other men present began to murmur, "Subhanallah, glory to God, and Allahu Akbar, and God is the greatest." Some had tears in their eyes. "He must have done many good deeds that we don't know about," said one of the older men. "Allah is showing us all that he has been accepted." I remained silent, feeling the perfume fill every corner of the room, feeling it envelop me like an embrace. Tears streamed down my face, but they were no longer just tears of pain. There was something more now, a mixture of admiration and consolation. The aroma persisted throughout the second washing, without diminishing, without mixing with any other smell. It was as if, for a brief moment, a breath from paradise had been allowed on earth. The third and final part of the ghusl consisted of washing the body with just pure water, without the addition of herbs or camphor. This is the final washing before the body is wrapped in the kafan, the white shroud. When they finished the third washing, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. His face, previously marked by dust and pain, now shone. It was as if a hidden smile had appeared. A doctor present whispered, "This countenance is not common." There was a subtle glow emanating from his skin. It wasn't a literal light that could be photographed or measured. It was something deeper, like a luminosity that came from within. His face, which hours before had been disfigured and grey, now had a serene, almost radiant appearance. The doctor, a middle-aged man who had come to pay respects, he had cared for my brother at the hospital and had been intrigued by his calmness in his final moments, was visibly impressed. Being a healthcare professional who had seen many bodies, he knew that what we were witnessing was not normal. "In my career, I have never seen a body look more alive after death," he commented quietly to me. "Usually the opposite happens. There is something here that my medical books cannot explain." Most surprising was that the corners of my brother's mouth appeared slightly elevated, as if sketching a subtle smile. As the doctor and a Muslim explained to us later, rigor mortis usually fixes a neutral or suffering expression, especially in cases of death by trauma. Post-mortem smiles are extremely rare. The Imam, seeing my expression of amazement, approached and placed his hand on my shoulder. "The Prophet taught us that the state of the body after death can reflect the state of the soul. Your brother is showing what we call nur, divine light. It is a great privilege to witness this." The men were gently drying the body with clean towels, preparing it to be wrapped in the kafan. The transformation was so complete that, if I had not seen the initial state of the body, I would never have believed that this same man had suffered such a violent accident hours earlier. After the ghusl, they opened the room so that family members and friends could say goodbye before the body was completely wrapped for the funeral. They called family and friends to say their farewells. Many entered crying, but when they saw the serene and illuminated face, they repeated, "Subhanallah, this is a good end." The pain was still there, but accompanied by a certainty. Allah had honored my brother. Our elderly mother, who feared she could not bear to see her son in that state, entered supported by my sisters. I tried to prepare her, saying that Abdul Rahman was unrecognizable because of the accident, but when she saw his face, she stopped, surprised. Instead of the horror I feared she would feel, she smiled through her tears. "My son is well," she said simply. "Allah has received him well." Children who would normally be afraid to see a dead body approached without fear. One of Abdul Rahman's young nephews, only 5 years old, looked at his uncle and said with the innocence of a child, "He looks like he's sleeping and having a good dream." A close friend of Abdul Rahman, who worked with him in construction, entered the room in tears. He had witnessed the accident and carried the guilt of not having been able to save him, But when he saw his friend's serene face, he fell to his knees. "I saw him die," he said between sobs. "I saw his body destroyed. But now, Allah is showing that he is at peace." The Imam explained to those who had never witnessed such a phenomenon, "In Islam, we believe that the signs of a good death are indications of the person's destiny in the next life. Not all Muslims receive these visible signs, but when it happens, it is a comfort to the living and an honor for the deceased." The news spread quickly through the community. People who barely knew my brother came to pay respects, moved by the news of the signs his body was showing. There was a sense of reverence in the air, as if we were all participating in something sacred, a glimpse of what normally remains hidden from the living. Until that moment, I thought I knew my brother. I knew he always called his colleagues to prayer, but there at the funeral I discovered much more. With the little he earned as a worker, he helped build mosques in our village, works he never told anyone about. An elder from our native village approached me after saying his prayers for my brother. "Did you know that Abdul Rahman donated a third of his salary every month to the construction of the new mosque in Kampung Baru?" he asked me. I was surprised. My brother lived modestly, and I often wondered how he managed to live with so little. Now I understood why. "He asked me to never tell anyone," the elder continued. "He said that the purest charity is that which the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is giving. But now that he's gone, I think people should know the good he did." Another man, the owner of a small grocery store in the neighborhood where my brother lived, also approached. "Your brother paid monthly food bills for 3 widows in the community," he revealed. "They didn't even know who their benefactor was. He would give me the money and ask me to simply say that their bills had been paid." A young woman wearing a simple hijab came with her husband and 2 small children. She told me with tears in her eyes that Abdul Rahman had paid all the costs of her wedding 7 years ago when her father died and she had no resources. "He said it was just a loan so I wouldn't feel embarrassed," she explained. "But when I tried to return the money years later, he always found an excuse not to accept it. 'Keep it for your children,' he would say." Each new story I heard was like a puzzle piece fitting into place, revealing a picture I had never seen in full. My brother, the simple worker, had lived a life of extraordinary generosity, practiced almost entirely in secret. The Imam of the mosque where my brother attended Friday prayers told the assembly that Abdul Rahman would regularly come before Fajr, dawn prayer, to clean the mosque. He never wanted anyone to know. He would arrive when it was still dark and finish before the first worshippers arrived. It was then that I understood. The signs of a good death don't appear by chance. Allah shows at the time of departure the value of what we do, both in public and in secret. The glow on my brother's face was the reflection of his silent prayers and hidden generosity. I sat alone for a moment, trying to absorb everything I had discovered. My brother, whom I saw as a simple worker, a man with little formal education, had led a life of extraordinary devotion and service. The Imam approached and sat beside me. "You are surprised by what you are discovering about your brother," he observed. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I replied. "I didn't know half the good he did." "In Islam, we value works done in secret," explained the Imam. "The Prophet taught us about 7 categories of people who will be sheltered under the shade of Allah on the Day of Judgment. One of them is one who gives charity so secretly that his left hand doesn't know what his right hand has donated. Your brother lived by this principle." He continued, "The Quran says, 'If you disclose your charitable expenditures, they are good, but if you conceal them and give them to the poor, it is better for you.' 2:271. Your brother chose what is better." I looked at my brother's body, now being prepared to be wrapped in the 3 white layers of the kafan. His face still maintained that radiant serenity, that subtle smile that seemed to know secrets that we, the living, still did not understand. And I realized that in a way my brother had not departed. He had merely entered another life, a life for which he had silently prepared himself day after day through acts of kindness that never sought recognition in this world. I learned that death is not the end. Islam teaches that life after death begins in the grave, and the state in which we depart reflects what we carry in our hearts. My brother had no wealth, no fame, but he had sincerity. And that is what Allah made evident on the day of the funeral. In the weeks that followed the funeral, I reflected deeply on everything I had witnessed and discovered. The transformation of my brother's body during the Ghusl was not just a comfort for our grieving family. It was a teaching for all of us. The Quran tells us, "Every soul will taste death, and you will be paid your reward in full only on the day of resurrection." Whoever is removed from the fire and admitted to paradise has truly succeeded, and the life of this world is nothing but an illusory enjoyment. 3:185. This verse gained a completely new meaning for me. Death is not just an inevitable biological destiny, it is a transition, a passage to the next phase of our existence. I began to reflect on my own life. If I were to depart today, what works would speak for me? What secrets would be revealed after my death? My brother's example showed me that it is not titles, possessions, or social status that define a person's value in Allah's eyes. It is sincere actions, especially those done without seeking recognition. The Imam told me that, in the Islamic tradition, there are 3 things that continue to benefit a person even after death: continuous charity, sadaqah jariyah, knowledge that benefits others, and virtuous children who pray for them. My brother had ensured at least 2 of these 3. His contributions to mosque construction were a form of continuous charity, and his example inspired many in the community to live their lives better, a form of practical knowledge that would continue to benefit others. In our Malay culture, we often say, hidup meninggalkan nama, mati meninggalkan jasa, life leaving a good name, die leaving good works. Abdul Rahman had done exactly that, though in a much quieter way than I had ever imagined. Stories like my brother's need to be told so that others can learn about the signs of life after death in Islam, not to provoke fear, but to inspire hope and reflection on how we live our lives. I began to share Abdul Rahman's story in small circles, first with relatives, then at the local mosque, and eventually at community gatherings. Each time I told what we had witnessed, I saw the same reaction: people deeply touched, rethinking their own lives. A young man sought me out after hearing the story. I always thought I needed to be someone important, to have a lot of money, to make a difference, he told me. But your brother was an ordinary worker, and look at the impact he had. That gives me hope. A mother told me she started using my brother's story to teach her children about generosity and sincerity. Now when we do charity together, we remember your brother and how Allah honors those who give without expecting recognition. The doctor who was present during the Ghusl and witnessed the transformation of the body contacted me months later. He had begun to study Islam, moved by what he witnessed that day. In all my years of medicine, I never saw anything like that, he told me. There are things that science alone cannot explain. If you are reading or hearing this story now, know that I share it not to seek fame for my brother. He never wanted that in life, and certainly would not want it after death. I share it so that we can all reflect on what truly matters. Share this account in groups and social media. Perhaps someone close to you needs to hear that it's not status or wealth that matters, but the sincere works we do. May Allah grant us a good death and allow our actions to speak for us when our time comes. Today, 5 years after my brother's funeral, I still visit his grave regularly. The pain of loss never completely disappears, but it has been transformed by everything I learned and witnessed. When I sit beside his simple grave, I don't imagine him in darkness or suffering. I see that serene and illuminated face, that subtle smile I witnessed during the Ghusl, and I know he is in a better place. Prophet Muhammad taught us that this world is the seedbed of the next life. What we plant here, we will reap there. My brother planted generosity, compassion, devotion, and humility, all in secret, and at the time of his departure, we saw the first fruits of that harvest. May Allah help us to live in such a way that, when our moment comes, we can depart with serenity. May our works, known and unknown, speak well of us, when we can no longer speak for ourselves, and may, when our own bodies are washed for burial, we also show the signs of Allah's mercy and acceptance. Perhaps you who are reading or hearing this story are on your own journey of reflection about life, death, and what comes after. I encourage you to contemplate. What legacy are you building? What works will speak for you when your time on this earth ends? As the Quran says, what is with you will be exhausted, and what is with Allah will remain. 1696. May peace be with you, wherever you are on your own journey. Ahmad bin Yusuf, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.